Oh. Forgot to adjust that beforehand. A little bit higher. Good enough. Don't jump. All right, guys. Anthony with Austin Historical Weapons Guild here with Andreas, again at our home in Vigilante. Today, again, we're picking up more of Jude Lew, Das Vex book. So obviously, again, this is Longsword, working off the manuscript and just kind of a live reading interpretation, kind of like you would any study group. Today we're starting on page 123, getting into the Zwerchau. So straight from the Zettel, Zwer takes what comes from Vom Tag. Know that the Zwer breaks the guard Vom Tag and all strikes coming down from Vom Tag. Do the Zwer as follows. When you're going to the opponent in the Zufected, when he stands against you holding the sword with erect arms high above the head and the guard which is watching you, then pay attention to put your left foot forward when you're coming toward him. Hold your sword with the flat at your right shoulder. If he steps toward you and threatens to throw a strike, come forward and leap appropriately with your right foot to your right side. While leaping, wind your sword with the hilt in front of your head, with the thumb facing downward. Strike with the short edge to the left side of the head. So there's a lot going on. Notably, first thing here that kind of jumps out is we're starting out of distance, and he's moving forward without throwing a strike. So there's definitely a lot of distance work, distance engagement going on. He's obviously up in this high guard, Vom Tag, hands over his head, hands up high. I want to make sure that as I approach, I'm approaching with my left foot forward, and we're still not in range. So if he doesn't move after this cut, to me, this means we're in the right range to be throwing cuts and attacking and engaging. If he's closing this distance forward, if he steps in without throwing a cut, right? If he just steps in, gets a little bit closer, this is when I want to leap to the side, control this with this Zwerchau. At least in this version of the attack, there will be none coming up that talks about other options. But if he steps forward and threatens to throw a strike, so he's not throwing a strike yet, but he's only threatening to do it, whether he doesn't have an idea of distance or maybe even slightly further away, whereas he steps forward, I don't want to get any closer without throwing an attack, so I use this to close that distance coming off to the side. So there's a few interesting things to start playing with and interpretations of things, notably holding your sword with the flat at your right shoulder. So a couple different options that immediately spring to my head. The one you probably see most commonly is taking the flat, putting it horizontally on this shoulder here, and just kind of working from this flat position, right? And we don't have an IQ of whether this should be completely horizontal, if the sword is up and down, anything like that. But he kind of says it's a flat to your right shoulder. Me doing too much 1 through 3 sword and buckler work, I hear flat to my right shoulder, like this on the outside position here isn't totally outside of my wheelhouse. In 1 through 3, second ward is kind of this position here where the sword is, the flat is on my right shoulder, but I'm not up here with it. It's kind of down there, right? So this could be a completely different option versus our normal Vom Tag, which is kind of, for me, by the ear, the lower Tag. You know, the high guard that he's starting from, I kind of work from something more beside the head. Now they're saying get the flat to your right shoulder, whether it means outside or it means here, something we can definitely start to play with and experiment with as we go into this. Other noteworthy potion to talk about is I'm leaping with my right foot to my right side. So you need to move over there so I have some space. Yeah. So I'm leaving my right foot to my right side, and I'm going to wind the sword from this position so that the hilt is in front of my head. And again, hilt is kind of a loose thing, so obviously not the pommel, but is in front of the head in the very literal sense where I just want to put it here. Is it just meaning from here I bring it over there? I need to go up, above, below. We don't get a whole lot of cues for that. The last thing they talk about, or two things, is getting your thumb so it's below, something very common, right? In that thumb grip, the thumb is underneath, then using the short edge to hit him on the left side of his head. So we can play with some of those, talk about them, how they feel from the attacker to the defender's point of view, and kind of start working that from there. So So as he comes to approach, I'm going to spring, coming across from there. And again, really focusing on that right step out to the side. So right away, I'm feeling like this chamber position, starting with it down low and outside of my arm, is definitely a little bit tight, a little bit cramped. There's definitely a lack of comfort getting it down here from my right wrist. If I go back to that kind of flat on the shoulder position, though, right, it feels a lot smoother. It's a lot easier to make this motion. I will say from my side, it feels like I'm getting a little bit less snap into that cut because I'm not dropping my sword the same way. Anecdotally for myself, if I'm starting either here or even low outside, bringing that second edge around gives a lot more drive. As you can see, it really starts to push this arm out. If I start flat and I throw this up, which doesn't say I can't train that to come through, but it definitely feels like a different style of cut. This is definitely more of a pushing it aside and hoping it does something, whereas from down here, I have a lot more snap as I'm rotating the sword to make that displacement, to make that pressure. I really can't say one feels better or worse than the other. Only thing we're gonna add now is I'm gonna have him throw in that cut, because right, no attacker, as I walk close to you, is gonna just let you step in and hit them. They're gonna cut across, they're going to react as I pose a threat, right? So starting nice and slow, he steps in, I go, then he cuts, kind of brings it across. So again, he steps in, I'm cutting, right? And as I hit him in the face, I feel fairly safe, fairly comfortable with that position. But again, most likely they're going to track to a little degree as that comes across from there. If I leave the sword flat on my shoulder, so one thing I'm kind of playing with as well is how low or high this hand should go, because that's something they don't really give us a lot of information, a lot of cues for. And at the moment, nothing really feels better or worse than the other. So we'll kind of put a pin in this and kind of come back to it after we look at a little bit more description options with this. Remember, while we're doing these, we're trying not to come in with preconceived ideas, preconceived notions of what to do. And realistically, each subsequent play should give us a better grounding, better base work of what we're coming from. So next item, if he comes forward with his strike earlier than you, leap with your right foot in the aforementioned displacement out of the strike to your own right side. Strike him with his Ver to the previously mentioned spot. So this sounds a lot like the Krump did, where as he throws this cut, now I'm leaping away from the cut, kind of pulling him away. So he comes out, bringing that across in that same method. Again, now from the shoulder. And that one felt vastly different to me. Let me see if that happens again. So again, from outside, and then from the shoulder. Do you feel any difference input feeling on those?
From the shoulder, it seems a little more energy.
Yeah. So Andre is saying, like, yeah, he's agreeing that from this outside position, there's a little bit more energy, a little more power to it, which is saying a lot because we're working at slow speeds without masks, with controlled. For myself, this outside shoulder feels a little bit safer, and I can't really quantify why that is, other than my instinct is saying, like, going from here feels a lot like I'm just throwing my hands up at his incoming blade. Or from out here, because I'm so wide and cocked back, when I come across, I wind up staying a little bit tighter to this position, where if I work from this tight position from the shoulder, I kind of get bound up on myself. Whereas here, I'm probably going to say this left arm is so across, I'm able to pull across much easier than I am from here. which isn't to say that I can't sit with the flat shoulder, flare up my left arm the same way, and get that same result, but it doesn't automatically happen. So I think that takeaway from this should be that it's less about where the sword actually starts and more to do with how far across my body my left arm is coming. So by having this all the way across and having this the outside, I can tuck this down, keep it low, and when the strike comes out, I can push all the way across, making it through. Whereas if I'm here, you can already see this arm is angled up more, it's no longer flat. And to make that flat, I start lifting my hand up, and now this is a more exposed target. So sure, I can start compensating by bending, but this is already gonna be better and let me really come across and control that. So tentatively, my strong opinion at this point is definitely keeping it outside your shoulder, more resting on the delt, right up on this area here. I want that flat tucked against it. So again, that's totally my open-minded interpretation, looking at 133 of how with sword and buckler we're here, so we can start making those attacks coming from out. Same thing here with this second hand on it now. This is coming across. So I'm not going to delve too much into 133 crossovers and tie-ins, but I feel like it makes a lot of sense. And definitely, if you've never tried his Verkow from that outside position, I definitely recommend playing with it, see how it feels, see what happens compared to what you've done in the past, and see if that changes anything for yourself. But moving on, continuing on page 125. From the Zettel, Zver with the strong/strength. Mark your work with this. So the gloss, note what this means. When you strike to him with this Zver, you should do it with strength. When he displaces, go up with the strong of your sword towards the weak of his sword. When you catch his weak with your strong, then work with the Mutieren over his sword to the lower opening or above to his neck. If you cannot do this, then work from the Duplier behind his sword with a strike to his head. All right, and that's one paragraph. We're going to start. And there's 2 or 3 things in here to play with and talk about. So this is going into what I've been, saying. The opponent is going to react. You're probably not going to actually strike with this opening. He's going to set aside and parry it. But once you're there, you need to go up to your strong towards the weak of his sword. Then from when you're on the weak, work the Mutieren. But if you don't get to the weak, if you can't do that, even if you've gone up, or if you can't go up, work the Duplier and the doubling to strike behind the head. So starting from the top, from the start, right? Nice and simple. And again, I'm just doing all these from this outside position just to be clear. So as he comes in, I'm throwing that. So here, I want to go up high, right? Notice my strong is now nicely on his weak, and he should feel pretty uncomfortable, right? I can easily go to the throat, like I said, or if I want, down to that lower opening, displacing, controlling nicely. So you can start to see it becomes a very quick, instantaneous indes transition where I've thrown this, and I'm immediately wrapping up, coming down, and thrusting through. A few interesting things that this passage makes me really think about is the height of that angle. So we kind of loosely talked about and ignored they say in the beginning, have your hilt in front of your face, right? But we don't know if that means literally that vertical height, keep the hilt here with extended arms. If it means just have it in front of your face, it could mean make it a more vertical position, things like that. There's not a lot of those pieces yet, but this definitely gives us a second piece of that where if we need to be able to push our hands up after we've made contact, that definitely tells us that we don't want anything super high. So I feel like a far more literal translation of that or interpretation of that definitely makes sense, definitely fits that idea. So I'm not throwing my Zverkow to this high position here because now I can't go up to catch his weak anymore. Also, if you notice, go back, my hand is in pretty serious danger of getting hit, depending on how this actually plays out. However, if we do that same crossing, and I'm throwing this more forward, right? My hands are, if you can see, like on it's been, in line with my face, right? They're in front of my face from my point of view towards him. Now we're a nice middle bind. I've got a little bit of leverage on him, but if I go up, I have a whole lot more. I can immediately just take that back down to make that thrust. Let me revisit the words a few more times. We know we talked about low and high openings. We haven't played those out as much as I would like. So when you catch his weak with your strong, then work the meteor over his sword to the lower opening or above to his neck. So I feel like this is saying like take whatever opening is there. So we talked about the Mutarian being kind of this, right? If we go back to normal bind, Mutarian is kind of the idea of I'm going to go high and drop my sword, lock it and catch from there. Taking that same concept from the Zverkow, because I'm in such a high bind, or I make such a high bind, this thrust to the neck is still coming in lower the way we were from the original Mutarian. So I feel like this is just emphasizing that as I come in from here, as I go up, I can chase low, but if he pushes up and starts to resist that, I can still just as easily catch him in the throat. I don't think there's a favoritism towards one attacker or the other, just that you should be able to, or aware that you can be doing both as you need to. Yeah, and I feel like actually from this, you go to the lower opening. If he's pressing that or doesn't let you come down that low, take the neck. However, if you cannot do this, if you can't make a Mutarian, if you can't catch his weak because he's pressing in, because he's engaged too hard, this is when you do Duplieren behind his sword with a strike to his head. So, again, working from the Zverkow. Here, I try to go high. I kind of get it, but he's really pushing. So Duplieren, if you remember, grab the pommel, push it across. And this is kind of one of my favorite interpretations of a Duplieren, is from that Zverkow crossing, right? So again, starting my shoulder to the outside, I just quickly turn and drop that through. And only by us being polite and not destroying each other is there any sort of risk to my hand in contact being made. So again, up, turn back through, and notice his sword is pushing out wide, stopping me from getting that raise to get the Mutarian. So I'm very content, very happy with how that plays out and matches the gloss. So definitely one of those artifacts of slow drilling and politeness that makes danger kind of show up when it's not actually there. All right, continuing that same idea, should he be too strong for you with his displacement, so you cannot make your pieces work, knock his sword with the hilt away and hit him with a Zuhair to the other side.
Nice.
Or else, if he wants to do an Einlaufen, or running in, make a cut under his arms. So there's a lot in this little kind of throwaway paragraph at the end. And it really starts to hone and highlight solutions for a lot of issues I've seen historically in inspiring matches and matches from the Zverkow. So key points here are that you really can't make any of these replacements work. He's driving in hard. He's coming in one instance, he's literally running in. And what else can you be doing against that? So we're going to break this down. I'm going to talk it through to kind of highlight what Andreas is doing and why I'm reacting in a way that kind of makes sense as far as this goes. So same opening, he cuts in. I come with this Zverkow. So here, he should be really pressing in, getting his strong against my sword, but that even here, I can't quite make that Duplieren even start to work, right? So from here, as he's pushing or engaging, I'm just going to shove and come back, crossing my arms to the other side, right? That's that kind of first opening he talks about where you press off with your hilt. Apparently, they're kind of including the cross guard with that, which I think is an interesting and important distinction to keep in mind reading these and understanding what this book is talking about. So again, from here, right, I can't get up. I can't make those actions happen. So I just let him have it, right? I use that little push, disengage with the cross, and come back around. And that kind of move, that signature Devil's Zverkow, is something you see so much of people trying to do and wanting to do, but it's, I won't say never, it's very rarely being done under that intention. Also without that guidance of control of my opponent's weapon, right? So a lot of people, you'll see those kind of throw a Zerkow and immediately throw this next one. Notice with that, there was no engagement of his weapon. And if Andreas is like holding a nice rigid parry here, right, all he needs to do is barely move. And now I'm in a world of trouble. Full with sound effects to make that really work. However, the difference here is that I'm making this engagement, I'm pushing it off and displacing. And I'm really trying to engage his sword with my cross, my handles to push it away and control and take it away for that split second to make my cut come around. It also helps trap his weapon away. If I go here, even if I don't get a solid push, I'm already inside his blade. Whereas if I don't make that engagement push here, right, notice how much farther away he is and how much farther my rotation is now. It doesn't do anything. But if I engage this out, I drive this in, I'm already in front of his blade, around his blade, before I even start that motion. Lastly was the Einlaufen, the running in, so making a cut under the arms. So we don't have a definition idea technique for Einlaufen yet. So we're gonna have a pretend, assume, play. Like it sounds pretty straightforward, right? So we're here, I throw my Zwerk, he's just gonna run in, right? Just like that. So I'm trying to make a cut under his arms from here. So my first reaction is kind of following that Zwerk we just did, of just driving this cut there. Not the easiest, not the most controlled position, but we'll see if we make it a little bit better, a little bit more smooth as I'm controlling, because I don't inherently just let him drive in and move it as much as I would in a drill, right? So we come here. Yeah, I don't like this falling out. That's definitely not doing what I want it to be doing. I'm definitely feeling off balance and attacked where I want to be in control of the fight. Like maybe that, because I feel a lot more secure in everything. I'm not sure I have a good strike to the arm. Do you have insider input?
Just wondering if my technique is wrong. Maybe I should. The Einlaufen doesn't work with that. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe my arm. If my arms were higher, you could do something like hand pressing or anything that would go to the hands. But I feel if I'm here, it's kind of hard to come under my arms.
Well, if you're there, maybe I just do a duplier. All right. It says, yeah, just make a cut under his arms. It doesn't even say to his arms for that matter, right? Maybe I'm just making a cut to his chest, to his torso, and his hand should be high. Right? So we'll do your cramped one again. Right? I can kind of get the duplier off. Like in less polite company, right? Yeah. So that is definitely, so you definitely need to be up resisting more and not letting me get those initial techniques off again. So whatever you did last time that forced this parry, make sure you're feeding that as you run in. Yeah. So here, I mean, I still feel like cutting under the arm, driving down through.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the last one. Right. What am I trying to do? Just bowl you over?
Running off, right? So we don't have, as I said, we don't have this idea of running off yet. I couldn't tell you if it shows up in this book or not. Or running in, excuse me. So you want to switch? You can Zwerk, and I'll run in. Outside. So I'm thinking that's running it.
Right.
Like I'm just driving in at you. Maybe I'm going to throw a nice terrible kick or something, but I feel like I'm here.
Well, all of this is Zwerkow related. I think there should be another Smack how doing that. You did it when you did
the first one.
Yeah.
But that was the worst feeling one of.
Hmm.
But it doesn't say do it on this vertical.
Fair enough.
It just says to cut below the arms.
Oh.
So if I'm running in here.
Is it just step aside?
I feel like stepping that way is a little bit.
Hmm. Hmm.
Maybe.
That felt at least driven into it as you sort of gave me the.
Yeah. Because I felt like I had nothing I could do on that.
Huh. Yeah.
Yeah, because I had my cross
Right.
here.
Hmm.
So was that last one you did that worked? It was just pulling off. It's kind of leaping back to your left.
Oh, the other one?
Yeah, the one that worked.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I would generate anything.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Let me try again.
Huh? Hmm.
I feel like that's close to it. And there you are, people. Like, it's not always clear cut. It's not always easy. Hopefully it'll make more sense. But yeah, it says if he wants to do an left, if he wants to run in, make a cut under his arms. And maybe it's assuming we should be acting sooner, right? Maybe it's very much a, here, I've come off, and I just do this. Because I'm still covered, I'm still safe. I'm not giving you any targets of me, but I'm just pulling away. As I feel you're pressing in,
And yeah.
I'm able to throw this cut up under your arms. If it catches your arms, great. If not, doesn't matter. But you're not going to have any presence threat against me as I come across. Right? Because even if you tried to strike from there,
kind of.
right, but that's also, again, you've already committed to running in, so I'm not really looking for that kind of momentum. So maybe it's just something as simple as that, because they don't mention footwork, they don't mention any kind of engagement, just that you're going to run in, so I need to make sure that I just get this underneath and pressed off and controlled. So something to think about, something to play with. I think we're going to call it a night from there. So if you guys have feedback on these, again, my takeaway, I'm really enjoying this kind of outside the arm, the warehouse setup. I've always done it kind of from here, throwing high and coming across. So really getting this outside the body and low really feeds this nice, powerful pulling kind of strike. But yeah, if you like it, if you hate it, let us know. Post on everywhere. I don't know. Comment, email, Facebook, anything like that. Otherwise, guys, we'll be back Friday night. I haven't decided what we're doing on Friday yet, so grab bag. We'll see what shows up. Otherwise, more Jude Lew next Monday. Thanks.